But so what they do is they screen them, give them a performance agreement. If they deliver, they get a bonus. If not, they are fired. Or they're not. The term is not really. Malaysia is my favorite example. As Professor Mishra mentioned, I've written a paper. Those who are interested can get the full paper on there. Some people claim that the transformation, the miraculous transformation of Malaysia by Mahathir was as a result of this performance-oriented technique. He put all departments on performance agreements. And I've been there, and the Ministry of Finance culture is completely different from our Ministry of Culture, our Ministry of Finance and Culture, because they are much more results-focused than line item. They don't focus on each line item and arbitrarily cut the budget. They're more focused, okay, to achieve this result, and if they have to cut the budget, they'll ask, what are your results priorities, and they'll only take out some of the lower priority stuff. Not that they take out 10% from all high and low priority, and as a result, you're not able to do anything. This requires a mindset. I'm not going to belabor this point, but anybody interested, I can come back to that later on. Kenya, of course, is my most recent favorite, and I believe it's leading the pack right now. And they won the United Nations Public Service Award for the most innovative, transparent system. And here is the group. I have worked in Kenya, I've worked with them, and this permanent secretary in the President's office, Mr. Richard N. Dubai, happens to be my student from Harvard. So I took special interest in their achievement. Many states in the US are doing it. I will not go through it. You can get this as a result. Let's come to the end, to some of the key points. So performance agreement, in short, is supposed to reduce the fuzziness. Remember, we said this is the problem. In short, the performance agreement is supposed to reduce this fuzziness and also break the vicious cycle of passing the buck in the not me syndrome. So as a result, you have a clarity as to who will do what and when, and you cannot say and pass the buck. My focus on performance, an institute like this which is focused on performance doesn't need me to remind them, but here is what Mahathir Mohamad said, that the quality of an effective government administration cannot be lower than that of its clients, specifically the private sector. Okay? This is a very common one, all of you have read. This is from Ted Gabler's Reinventing the Government. What gets measured gets done. If you don't measure results, you can't tell success from failure. If you can't see success, you can't reward it. If you can't reward success, you are probably rewarding failure. If you can't see success, you can't learn from it. If you can't recognize failure, you can't correct it. And the last, the most important in my view is, if you can demonstrate results, you can win public support. And that is the big goal of the results framework. If we can say, look, this is what we promised, this is what we delivered, I think people will start trusting. And I believe, I am a party, I shouldn't say, but we have Dr. Geeta here, she can vouch for it, but NCA did an independent study. Compared to 80s, the criticism of public enterprise at the central level has gone down dramatically. Except for one or two which are iconic. They are Navratnas and they've done well, they're going to other countries. In fact, the IPOs of public enterprises have done better than the private IPOs. The study independent group has said. So as a result, we have reasons to be proud. And when I came sort of back to the government, and I will, my heart is very close. It's not that I'm ignoring it, I just haven't had the time to look into it. I'm on what is called the High Power Committee now, so all these things will come up to me. But the issue is, somebody came up and said, Professor, when you were there, we like revolutionary, we did this, and now it's become routine. I said, that's great news. That's good news. When governance becomes routine, that's good news. We don't want governance to be the headlines that means that it's become standard practice. That's what it is. Governance should not be news all the time. Governance must become regular practice. And so it has become a regular practice. Okay, it has become a little bit of routinized. No system is perfect, no democracy is perfect. So we should not be so disheartened that it has become routine. So what? It's become good, it's become routine. That we don't have to have a revolution each time for every year to bring out the MOUs. It's become part of a management framework. So I don't think we need to sweat too much. I'm going to skip all that. I'm in a hurry to get to a point, so I will skip, and you'll have the presentation so you can ask questions and we can continue to debate. Meaning of government performance. I'll have to skip this and just comment a little bit. Ex ante performance versus ex post. Very important. You know, we talk about performance as if we know performance. The problem is we don't even know performance. There's one performance which is ex post, which is what the researchers do, and which is legitimate exercise to learn lessons. But there is ex ante performance which is required for management purposes, and we have to make a difference. The equation looks something like this: that the agency performance. This is the second difference: agency versus managerial performance. Agency performance is equal to managerial performance plus minus exogenous factors. So if a public enterprise has done well, this is, since I am here, I'll use the public enterprise example. Coal India, I remember when they were doing the first round of MOUs, Mr. Narayanan used to be the CMD, sort of came back and said, look, if you want me to make profit, I have to reduce my production because the price, the administered price of coal is lower than my cost of production. So I have to reduce from the high cost mines the production to be able to make profit. I can make profit, but then you have to live with less coal. What do you want? And so the government then, deliberated and said, no, we want more coal because that's what we really want. And we will not change the administered price. So that meant that the more coal he produced, the more losses he made. So the MOU agreed that he will produce more coal and agreed on a targeted loss. Lo and behold, next year, Mr. Narayanan achieved the target for production and loss. In fact, the loss was a little less. So he got an excellent rating. And the newspapers just went crazy, saying, look, what kind of a system has been introduced that, a loss-making enterprise has been rated as excellent. They forgot that the purpose of the system was to see whether you meet your commitments, not whether you make profit or loss. So similarly here, the agency performance would be loss. The exogenous factor would be the administered prices. And the managerial performance could still be excellent. Mr. Narayanan stayed up day and night to ensure that the coal production was up there. So therefore you have to make this. If you don't make this distinction, I think then you've not reached into the realm of scientific management. I'll skip this example from hospital. Well, maybe I should dwell a little bit on this matrix. So if you take divide performance efforts into various cells, one is the managerial performance, agency performance, and then on ex ante performance and ex post performance. Cell number one is really what we call the results-based management framework. Whether it's the MOU or results framework document, they fall under cell number one because they deal with managerial performance and based on ex ante agreement on what needs to be delivered. Now, other cells are also important. Cell number 4 deals with impact studies. But we have to be sure that not all evaluation studies provide the right answer. It depends on what answer you're looking for. Now, let me go to the best practice methodology you're all familiar with. I mean, these are some of my favorite books. I hope you have them in the library. Banishing Bureaucracy by David Osborne and Peter Lustig, a must-read. Breaking Through Bureaucracy, Reinventing the Government, Improving Government Performance, and Owner's Manual Implementation. This is fantastic. The Reinventor's Field Book by David Osborne and Peter Lustig. Performance Drivers. This is a DVD. You should keep it. All the wisdom on performances in this series called Yes Minister. Some of you may have read the book or seen the DVD show. It's a BBC show. This is a book by Al Gore, which is the report of the President Clinton's National Performance Review Commission. You know, Mr. Gore wrote this books, these reports on all departments, and I find them fascinating reading because the way they analyze what are the performance barriers when Clinton became president for the first time. It was a fantastic piece of work, and I think it has great relevance for many of our departments. At least it will make them feel that everything is not perfect with American government. This is the latest book by Ken Miller, a friend. Really good book. It says we don't make widgets. You know, the economists use the word widgets for something concrete. And the government people always say, look, you can't measure our performance because we don't make widgets. But he tries to argue in this book why you can. Okay. Last few slides that you bear with me. Performance information system. You have seen that any performance improvement system requires effort on the performance information system, evaluation system, as well as incentive system. Right? I will not go into performance information system, but I don't mean a sophisticated computer-based performance information system. Some of the top managers in the private sector, in the book In Search of Excellence, they have said that what they did was they simply went to the shop floor and they could figure out by watching a few points whether things were all right or not. That was their information system. You don't even need a computer. A good information system is where you get appropriate information, timely information, and in appropriate format. That's all. You need not be even computer-based. But be that as it may, then you must know how to use it as an evaluation. No matter how sophisticated your information system, if you can't use it to evaluate, then it's no use. Evaluation system debate can be divided into two parts. One dealing with criteria, the other dealing with institutional arrangement. Both very important. How to evaluate and who should evaluate. The success of MOU, in my personal view, I don't know your thesis what it said, but was the creation of a third-party evaluating body. Because this body has really sustained the system. Secretaries have come and gone, but the continuity in this body has, and the integrity of some of the majority of the people, I would say, if not all, has led to the sustainability of the system. But I will focus on how to evaluate, very important. There are 4 steps to it, and this is what you need to know. Those who have done it, you know it, but many times we tend to forget, so it's good to remind ourselves. The first step is success, selection of success indicators. Very straightforward. I think in the government everywhere, where you have success indicators, you always choose criteria, performance criteria. It's nothing new. The problem is, suppose you have 15 criteria, and at the end the manager comes and says, sir, out of 15 I have done 12. I have achieved the target for 12. What would you say the performance was? Good or bad? Well, it depends. If those 3 things that the manager did not achieve were the critical things for that organization, then the performance is not good. So what is required is, anybody in this year, you need to prioritize your success indicators and objectives. So by attaching weights, like it has been done in this case, weight of 50, 30, and 20, you know which is more important, less important. So now if you did not do the least important, it's okay, you did at least the most important things. But if you say I did 1 out of 3, and you didn't do 50%, then that's not 1/3, it's 50%. Okay, so attaching explicit priority is very important. It clarifies the mind of the person who's about to perform and the one who's about to give instructions. Now that itself is not good enough. Another major congenital flaw of our evaluation systems in the country, and at least in the government, not anymore in the public enterprises after MOUs, but in the government it's mind-boggling that it continues. It's single point target, whether it's in Narega, whether it is any of the schemes that we are talking about. Suppose you give Ministry of Transport a target to build 40,000 kilometers of road, and the department comes at the end and says, sir, we have built 37,000 kilometers of road. Is it good or bad performance? Well, you don't know. Really don't know. Because if you like, the secretary, the minister might say, well, good old chap, this is close enough, acceptable. If he doesn't like him for some personal reason, he'll say, the problem with you is you never meet targets. You can go either way. That is why it is terribly important in modern evaluation systems. And therefore, anybody who does not use it is not evaluating. He may or she may be doing whatever they are doing, but not evaluating if they don't have a scale concept. And I'm not saying it has to be 5-point scale, it can be 10, 9, 7, whatever, but a scale. So you introduce a scale where you say, look, excellent means 30, and poor means 5. Things gone again. Sorry?
It's performing average. They like it.
Yeah, I know, yeah. I started to, when you use it for some...
Unpredictable.
No, it's highly intelligent, it warns me, they don't show this. And, over the period it has figured out what the audience wants and what people want, so it warns me. Anyhow, it's working, so maybe it thinks it's okay. Well, so this is a terribly important concept. A modern evaluation system which does not agree on ex ante on the deviations from the target is not really doing a fair job. The last is the evaluation. Since you all know the system, that if this is the achievement, 15 is the achievement, and it's neither 10 nor 20. You probably can't see from the back, I'll read it for you. 15 falls between 70% and 80%, so it's 75%. Okay? Similarly, this is 90% and this is 100%. You cannot add them up because they are weighted differently, so if you multiply the 75% with 50%, you get 37.5. You multiply 90 with 30, you get 27%, and you multiply 0.2 with 100 and you get 20%. When you add them up, you get the composite score, which is the bottom line. So what the revolution that we have introduced in the government of India is, now the government departments will be measured on this thing, and they'll all have a bottom line. The bottom line that was missing, my thesis at least, led me to believe that the key to efficiency is not ownership, but competition. Private monopolies are as inefficient as public monopolies. It's monopolies which is the real problem. So once you have public versus any competition, in fact, I have, when I came, as you know, that the 4th and the 5th and the 6th pay commission have recommended not only increases in salaries, but also a performance-related incentive scheme. And they were all accepted by the Government of India. The Government of India believes that performance-related incentives should be introduced. They believed in the 4th pay commission, 5th, 6th. When I joined the government, I asked what's happening, because the word performance-related incentive got me excited. I would talk to Secretary Expenditure, she would say, well, it's in DOPT, I talked to DOPT, that says it's an expenditure, and ultimately I got a chance to put them in the same room. I said, what's going on? And they said, well, the problem is, incentives is not a problem, but what is the definition of performance in the government? So I think by breaking this barrier, by providing a bottom line description of performance, I am pretty hopeful that within a few months, you will see a performance-related incentive scheme being introduced in the Government of India. The paper is already in the pipeline in the Committee of Secretaries, and we hope to bring it out. Seems to be wide agreement. I have discussed that paper. Final time, I would be happy to show you the scheme now. It's a wonderful scheme. Nobody seems to have objections, so I believe it will go through. That would be a revolution. Not only we will have performance measurement, but we'll also have up to 40% of the salary of the secretary would depend, or he would get up to 40% of his salary as bonus, as performance-related bonus. So that's substantial. Yeah. done deal because we were to go through.
We'll follow the same thing here and we have a committee of 20 persons. And apply the same thing. If we can agree to a system here,
Sure.
to this, and find an idea performance of each secretary, and those who perform, they may get 40%.
Yeah, why not? Why not? I think that requires that is a genuine. That's wonderful.
And you won't, you may have any rank.
Yeah.
Rank will have
Exactly.
nothing to do.
Absolutely.
A person will rank if he doesn't perform, you will not get it. Maybe we will suggest that we should get less.
Right.
And there will be 3 or 4 things in our case that we can very easily avoid.
Sure. And that's exactly it. And scientists are doing it, by the way, in the department of, you may want to look at that. Before I go, I want to share a story with you. But let me, since I got it here, I'll share that and then I'll answer a few other questions on it. There's a very old story at Harvard. Since I love, there is a chalk here, I referred to it on the board. And it gives you the light. So hard to get anything but the chalk. Now it's hard to get the chalk. Yeah. I, in fact, at some point started carrying my own chalks in my briefcase. My favorite chalks. There are chalks which are the Rolls Royce of chalks, which are, dustless. And I used to teach at the Kennedy School. They used to give a box which I never gave back. Well, the story goes like this. There's a physics professor who asks students to answer a question after one semester of teaching, that how would you measure the height of a building using a barometer? And you know what a barometer is. It's a column of mercury which is calibrated. And the right answer is you go and take a reading here, and you take a reading at the bottom. The difference in the column of mercury will give you from that you can figure out the height of the building. That's what barometer is. But the student who was writing the exam wrote the following answer. He said, sir, what I would do is I'd go to the top of the building, tie the barometer to a piece of string, and lower it down like this. And then I would pull up the string and measure the string. So the length of the string would give me the height of the building. And a legitimate way of measuring the height of the building using barometer. The professor was not amused. He failed him and said, please come and see me in my office. So the professor goes dutifully, and then the student goes and sees the professor in his office. He said, look, I can't believe after 4 months of my teaching you give me this answer. Give me the right answer, let you go. I know you must be joking. The question is, how do you measure the height of this building using a barometer? He says, sir, what I would do is I'd go to the top of the building and throw the barometer down, measure the sound, the time taken by the sound of breaking glass to travel from here to here. I know the velocity of sound. From there I can figure out the height of the building. Perfectly legitimate. Professor starts getting a little worried. His nostrils expand. Ears become red. He holds on to the chair, half tongue in cheek, says, any other method, my friend? Any other answer? He said, yes, sir. He says, sir, what I would do is I'd go down, put the barometer down here, measure the shadow of the barometer, and I measure the shadow of the building. I know the ratio between these two. From the shadow of the building, I can figure out the height of the building. Very, very, and so now the professor is getting really upset, and water tongue in cheek, he says, any other method, my friend? He said, yes, sir. All these buildings have a fire escape at the outside. So he says, since the barometer is calibrated, I simply put the barometer, measure the height of the building using the barometer. That's what you want. Now, professor had lost his, cool, and the student was no dummy. After all, he is a Harvard student. So he looked into professor's eye and said, Prof, why don't you simply say what is the best way of measuring the height of the building using the barometer? So the professor takes a deep breath and he says, yep, I stand corrected. What is the best way of measuring the height of the building using a barometer? The student says, sir, if you ask me, the best way is I take the barometer, go to the owner of the building, give the barometer as a gift and ask him what's the height of the building. So there are many ways, and that's exactly what performance management is. There are no one answer. So I leave it to you. question because other material I can bring in when I'm answering questions because there are many more other issues.
Questions? Sridhar,
Any question, anything?
speaking
Otherwise, I'll start my next presentation, which I did not complete.
Sir, is Government India also considered under performance accountability legislation like you also?
Good question. Not to be quoted, but there is, you may have read it in the. You have a pencil? No pencil. Oh, pen. See, there was, Government of India had planned to bring out a civil services law. Right? This was announced many years back, actually 2-3 years back. It's in the papers, in the Second Administrative Reform Commission as well, it has been mentioned. I'm part of the team which is working on it. In the last meeting, very final stage it has come. And it's going to go now to the group of ministers, etc. And the title of the bill is, so it was up and down. I mean, at one point they said, what's the point? Maybe we don't need a civil services law. So the bill is now called Civil Service Standards, Performance and Accountability Bill, where performance management, the things I have talked about, the results framework document, actually I did not go into the details of that. I left it because of the time. So I'll be happy to show you the format, etc. But this has been done by Prime Minister's order right now. So it will be done by law. So no future government will be able to reverse it. So that is really the hope and the desire of the government. And I hope that is the right thing to do. So it will also include, other than performance, ethics, a code of ethics, and a mechanism. So since I am a member of it, I don't believe in slogans. Everything we must have a mechanism to implement. So you say, don't say anything that you can't implement. And if it's implementable, assign a mechanism in the law itself that there will be a director of ethics and this is how it will be done. So what will we do? Not just say we should be ethical, but we must have a mechanism. So I think all that is it. That's why it's called standards, performance and accountability. Standard means both code of conduct and ethics.
So you spoke about so many countries and their systems of governance. I just wanted to know the case of Singapore, because I think Singapore is one country where both public systems and governments have been working extremely well, and we quoted as an example. So what is so different? Is it the leadership provided by Lee Kuan Yew initially that has made their systems like this, or what is it? How is it different from others, and why can't we emulate them?
Well, I mean, Singapore, first of all, Singaporeans tend to differ with that. I mean, I've had large number of Singaporean students over the years. The current defense minister was my student at Harvard, many of them. So I have particular interest, and as you know, the Kennedy School of Government, where I taught since 78, 79, set up a school of public policy in Singapore. One of the first they set outside Boston. My reading of that situation is as follows, that in principle, they do exactly what the theory says. They have very clear accountability, what you need to do. They choose the right people. They have a much better system than we have in our country of choice. And then they have huge incentives. When a minister is appointed, as you know, they are given a salary of $1 million. And in the Lee Kuan Yew himself says, and so that there is no incentive left for corruption. You get the best person and they pay him more than what he would get, so that he's completely relaxed. He doesn't have to indulge in how am I going to make money, what my family. And then if you don't perform, he's losing. There's no reason. So they have very clear targets, huge incentives, get the right people in place. So pretty much in theory what we do, they do it instinctively. And that's why they have done. I mean, I can can say it in the closed four doors here, so long as the camera does not record it for posterity. But for many years, many of these students would come and I would find that the Singaporeans would be under tremendous pressure to come. And first day of the class, they would say, Professor, how do I, do this? And I said, what's your problem? They enjoy the weather. They come to a new country, partly for them to enjoy, partly for let me enjoy. Don't bother me with these heavy-duty questions on how do I reform the tax code, how do I automate my income tax, and they would be always like project-oriented, very serious. Whereas our colleagues from India would come and they would ask pleasant questions, Prof, where can I get 220-volt appliances and things like that. So I, after a while I asked them, how come culturally you're so different, that you're so focused on my colleagues from my country are like this, and I came to the conclusion they have a tremendous way of managing. When they send somebody abroad to a place like the Kennedy School, they're spending $80,000 or so. They take it seriously. They invite asking that why should you be going to Harvard? What problem will you solve there? What is it that you can't do sitting here? What is the national problem that requires solution for which you need to go there? So they have to identify one problem for which they need to go study what the world is doing, and then they come back and make a presentation to the Prime Minister. So from day one, they are under stress. Whereas our friends know that once they come back, they will be dumped in God-forsaken place. Nobody, in fact, they'll be punished for having gone abroad. The rest of the people are jealous that, so you think you've learned a lot from there. I'll show you what you've learned. You go to Meghalaya for some years and come back and talk to you. That's what, so that is the difference. There the culture is different. Manage their assets very well, human resources.
And one more thing was that last time Mr. Mishra sir was sharing with us, the beauty of the Singaporean leadership that he was sharing with us is that right from the day that they used to address the people, they used to make two significant statements. Irrespective of the political party that they are. Number one, charity means it. Number two, it's not only about the wealth that you are creating, it means you adopt to create a wealth which party.
In fact, Mr. Navani has been to this history. He is being the foreign minister. He was also the Indian security council. And then, luckily, we have a National Research Institute who really benefit from public policy. Let me ask you, the Institute of Public Policy, its budget is more than the budget of the UGC, Ministry of Commission. Total budget of the UGC is much less. In fact, many corporates, they have committed about 2,500 crore per year to that institute. And they are the best to pay the professors there. Sanjay Babu was doing
Well, that's the way it is. I mean, around the world, in the US, I've made this point to the private sector here. They complain about governance, but they don't invest anything. I said, you must invest. If you want to, whether it's Reliance, Max, anything, they must, in the US, they have Center of Excellence in Government run by IBM. Why can't Infosys or one of them is peanuts for them? They could, they need to invest if they want governance to do. Governance is not, as I said, only for the government to do. It's for all of us.
We have to learn a lot from this presentation. And if I can again, we had one Mr. M. Ramesh there. And Mr. Ramesh has moved out from the Institute of Public Policy to the University of Hong Kong. And he had to go, he was full professor. He was there for 5 years. But on performance record, he got less citations. He did less work for the institute. He was, most of the time doing this at his own work. And since he had less, they had to tell him to leave. And he had to leave the full professor for 5 years. But they told him that your performance is below par performance, and I will go over this set. He told that, no, I have to do my work, but why have you done for the institute? How much you have done to placement, how much you have got, what is research you have done, what is consulting you have done, what is training you have done, and put together, as you told sir, they have developed an index. So there is no question that I have done more research, less of this, more of that. No, on total score, composite score, what was activities possible. So that's one thing where we people gather with knowledge and we create a community. And I think that's your single most conditional activity. That is score. You buy out and more, that total score is less. So please give us. There is a mirror, see yourself. And if you don't see, then we make you see.
I mean, this brings personal memories. I mean, one of the reasons when people say, how come? I mean, basically, as I said, I'm a mainstream economist. This is really not mainstream economics, this is more management. But I got interested. I came back from London School of Economics and I got a job in St. Stephen's College in Delhi, which is a pretty decent college. At that point, it was the best. I was very excited. And the day I got this thing, I was told now it's tenure for life because, in 1 year you get confirmed and that's it. So literally I had no interest in teaching. I was, doing all kinds of things. I met my wife, I did all kinds of things. I directed plays, television, except for teach. Because I said, I've got the tenure. Why teach? I was like completely secure. Then I got this senior teaching fellowship in Boston University for my PhD. So I went there with this casual attitude. I was like the worst teacher I used to go when the students are so bright at St. Stephen's. Their cutoff points are very high in science students. The course is meant for average and they're way above average. So they can do it in 1 month. Most of the time they also wanted to chat about London and life. So we were just chatting most of the time. A little bit of work. When I went to Boston University, my eyes were open. They put a paper in front of me and said, look, buddy, if you do not get this score, you're going back to India. And the teaching will be evaluated on whether students think that you know the subject, how interesting you are, how well you present it, how careful you are in attending to your office hours. And they had 6 criteria. And there was a composite score, and if it fell below this, you were gone. You should have seen how good a teacher I became. I learned, I weird, and the reason, again, didn't get the Harvard job just because of any connections or relations. My professor, the PhD guy, he's himself from Harvard, and he used to teach there. So he was taking time off. So he told a bunch of us that whoever gets the highest score this semester, I will recommend his name. And that was another turning point, how hard I tried to be a good teacher. Just because, and I made it because I had the highest score among the 6 of us. So I made it, purely on that reason. But my biggest eye-opening experience was after many years teaching there, etc. I came back, I got as Professor Mishra said, I was lucky enough, I was very young, I think at that point, a full chaired professorship in Indian Institute of Management, Calcutta. I only accepted because I thought it was a joke. Because I know that you have to have white hair before you get a chaired professorship, and I had jet black hair and chaired professorship. Yeah, it was really, I just took the plane and I told my wife, let's go. We didn't know anybody in Calcutta. Just said, before they change their mind, they find out my age or something. They were looking for people working on public enterprise, and at that point I had not done much work, but whatever I had done was on public enterprise, so it fitted what they were looking for. So it turned out I was lucky, and they said this guy is the most qualified in the chair. Anyhow, I went there. The first faculty meeting I attended. At that point, the university, some salaries of the professors had been increased enormously, and there was a condition, all IIT, IIM salaries had gone up, and there was a condition that you must have a performance evaluation system to go with the high salary. One year, Professor Rao was asked to look into the report and present evaluation thing. So in that faculty meeting, the very first faculty meeting, he presented. And he was trashed. People attacked him, as if he was from Mars. And for me it was like new. The first time I was there and looking around, after a while I remember my intervention, and I said, look, I joined this great institution because when I look at the degrees of all the people who are here as faculty, all of you seem to have foreign degrees. Did you make these points when you were abroad? What you're making to Professor Rao? That how will this be used? Why is it being used? There we like, Biggie Willy, we accept these systems and, go along. Here in our country, you start questioning, why should you evaluate I'm a professor at IIM, why should you evaluate? There at MIT, you are being evaluated, you didn't complain. So it is cultural, I don't blame you. It is human tendency not to be evaluated. I have decided never again to take an exam for that reason. I don't want to be evaluated. So I don't blame anyone. The fact is, no institution, no one can improve unless we know what is expected from us.
So then how do these lessons of experience help you in reforming or uplifting public sector enterprises? How do you believe that when we are culturally different?
I don't believe we are culturally. No, we are not. In fact, I don't believe for a minute we are culturally. This is a sham we use. When it comes to using mobiles and the TVs and all the good things in the US, like that we are just, right? And all the Western things all the fun things, all the movies we love, the PVRs and all that, we don't have any problems. When it comes to efficiency, they say, no, it's a Western concept. How come? There can't be.
When it comes to measurements, especially.
Yeah, so this is just a bogey. And whenever we saw it in the MOU, the same argument was raised. Trust me, we went through the same thing. That, it can't be done in India, let's try and pilot and let's see what happens. Till now it's 200. We started with 4, went to 7, then to 11, and people were not sure. And so this culture thing is the biggest myth. We are all human beings, we all respond to positive incentives and this thing. We are all results oriented. So there's no cultural difference.
So when you practically work for reform, for upliftment, what are the challenges? Do you feel this culture thing comes?
No, I don't. For instance, in the government of India, I've just done it. It's not theory. I did it with 59 departments out of 84. In phase 1, we'll be expanding to others. 3 reasons. Not a single secretary devoted. All 59 submitted. They're all smart people. They all, in fact, welcomed it. They thought it was a protection against the arbitrariness of.
For you, being an Indian helps.
No, I think, no, of course, if there was a foreigner, it would certainly be that, but that's not the issue. I don't think you're talking about whether the person who's bringing the message is culturally the same or not. That's not. Whether the stuff is culturally consistent. The stuff, fortunately, is totally culturally consistent. What we are saying is exactly what we do from kindergarten onward. What is the difference in that culture? You have exams, you evaluate it, we do so well. The reason we are sitting here is because we had exams and we did well. We knew exactly what to do. So that is the same culture that we are saying, continue to do it. Continue to have results and continue to do well. There's no other, we're not making a new cultural statement here. We are saying, look, from class 1 till PhD, you are always, whether in India or abroad, you were told what you will do and you prepared for it and you responded well. So please continue to do that.
I wanted to ask would performance management system be a little different when it is for public sector enterprises and for the government? Maybe some combination of this direct approach in Trivedi and some approach together would make sense for government. How is that working in government department?
I can give you all the examples. If the wireless is here, I have 59 RFPs and you should look at them. But you see, what we are talking about is results. I have not come across a single department, single country which says I am the same as that. Every single country claims I am unique. Every single ministry claims I am unique. Every single one claims I am the most important one in the country. How can you have anything without help? The water will say, well, if there is no water, there is no hope. So these are all there. What we are focused on is results. For different enterprises, results are different. And so for some from that list, you can choose some which may be relevant for you. And in public enterprises, since financial profits are important, 50% weight is given to that. In this case, whatever is your objective. So it's common sensical methodology. In fact, if you allow me, I will have to show you this later. Maybe I should. What we're trying to do is this. This is really the simple thing that we use. This is the chain that is used. You have inputs lead to activities, activities to output, outcome, and goal. So, you can take any example, and there are many variations, your internal output versus external output. But let me take an example. This one, oral rehydration. So, you have funds, that's inputs. Funds get converted into activities, media campaign. Then you have outputs, internal. This is the oral rehydration for diarrhea when children die, one of the major reasons why children die. Then improved use of ORT, and then the child mortality decreases. That's the final outcome. So in the government, the whole idea is, where we are right now is we are measuring inputs, all expenditure going, how much we are spending. We are trying to move them on this chain from here up to here. We may not succeed. In this round, we have not succeeded to move them all the way to goals. So that's a cultural change. Not cultural in that cultural sense of Indian culture, but bureaucratic culture around the world. So the books by Osborne also talk about this culture. So that's a different culture. Public sector culture. That is, we are money spending, focused on 31st March, spend the money. So this year we are trying to move them a little higher up on the chain, and we hope them to move. But the way to choose this is that you have to ask, look, my problem in, let's say, health department, and that's why I chose this, my problem is to reduce child mortality. What is the best way to do it? I have 5 ways to do it. And I do a survey and I find that some children are dying of malaria, some are dying of polio, some are dying of hunger, some are dying of oral dehydration because of bad water contamination, and they get diarrhea and they die. Then I figured that the maximum number of people that are dying is because of oral rehydration. Then I have what is called my theory of change. So how do I fix that problem? This is my theory of change, that I need to do all this to achieve this change. So once I had the minister convinced that, look sir, oral rehydration therapy is really the answer, and that's a policy level decision, and he agrees that this is the best way to do it, now it's a matter of measuring these things. So the results framework documents then measure these. So these will differ from agriculture to rural health to education, but the methodology will be the same. We are trying to move all government departments from inputs up on the results chain. And in fact, if I may go, in many cases you don't have the data, because sometimes data is a problem. Data isn't available only up to a certain point. So in the RFP, we say that improving your data collection itself becomes part of your management too. That you must improve. If you don't have data on how children are dying, then what's the point of working on solutions? First, at least improve your data collection. So that itself becomes a result before you get any other result. That's like a fundamental primordial result. We think that this level of input, activities, and internal outputs are all part of administration. Real result is where you start affecting the welfare of outside your own organization. And that is program evaluation, which is long-term evaluation done by Planning Commission. So the results management is in this area, which is not strictly my administration, because strictly administration is, okay, you've got the money, you can do the workshop. But did the workshop have the impact that you desired? Did it change anything? That is the result. That is outside the boundaries of your control. So it has to be slightly outside.
I think everybody agree. I don't think you can say anymore that that input is deterministic and output is probabilistic. I think this is what we are doing in our country. Input is deterministic, but if it comes to output, it is probabilistic. We could not do this because we have to come down heavily. Anyone who doesn't produce, anyone who escapes and doesn't come up, on this go to the school, we have no place in any organization.
How are we going to deal with it? There's a question of access of availability of doctors. Health is a big health is
Yeah.
How do you deal with
You
it?
see, there are two issues. There's a very important question. I hope you paid to. Let me repeat that question. Deserves repetition. The question is, what if we don't have enough doctors, and how are you going to deal with that? See, there are two issues. One is what you are doing, and then the second is how much you are doing. That what you're talking about is the level of target. First is, you agree that we have to reduce child mortality. Yes. You agree that the biggest cause is oral dehydration or this problem. Yes. Now, how much you can do this year will depend on the resources, and that's the matter of setting the target. Nobody is saying eliminate no children, no child dies. That nobody's saying, but at least given the resources, get the maximum bang for the buck. So it's a matter of what target you set, not what you do. So we have to make that distinction. There was a question there, but I'm indifferent. Maybe you start from here.
Yes, it is not only this thing about child mortality. Yes, and mortality levels. This is only with reference to the oral dehydration part. When it comes to the Indian rural side, apart from the child mortality, the protein deficiencies are more. That's one thing. See, the oral dehydration, child mortality, the kid will die.
Sir, I will not, this is just a hypothetical example, and I apologize for this. Yeah, because I don't want to get into the debate of this.
No, I'm not going to.
I'm completely ignorant about oral dehydration.
See,
It's an example.
my question is, child mortality on account of the oral dehydration, the child will die at the end of it. But protein deficiency, it is being crammed, and they are going to be the burden on the society in future. See, in olden days, what used to happen, the poor man's protein, that is the groundnuts are plenty available and it was taken in the rural area. Now, how do you want to build a gap between this and that? That's what it is.
I'm not discuss the health policy here because I have no expertise in that. I just took an example to show if this is the real problem, then this is it. But you're absolutely right. It's a very complex issue.
Can we make a very brief question? We have to get the
This is regarding the determinants of performance.
Right.
The systems account for 80%, whereas the people are accounting for 20%.
Correct.
But if you look at the enterprise, it's not my perception alone, the perception of a group of people. It's not that we have lack of systems, lack of planning tools, lack of techniques, but what we lack is motivated workforce, making the resources available to execute the job. This 80%, if you are at the director level, chief executive level, and higher above, the systems that will be holding them, the empowerment, the what you call, the economy, and all that. But if you communicate down to the middle management level, what holds us today in a public sector or in any basically public sector, it is the motivated managers, motivated workforce, making the resources available for the people to execute. That's what exactly is holding the people. This is what I have seen over a very long period. I mean,
You're right about that.
because I'll ask a small clarification.
No, you're right, but my view would be that the lack of motivation comes from lack of system. There is no system to motivate because then why are they demotivated? They find that people with less merit are getting promoted. There's no consequence. I work hard, I get no extra reward. So they're demotivated. That is what I meant by poor system. They're not demotivated because they're genetically deformed. They're finding that I am as competent, and I have it in my organization, the office I run. I find people come and complain to me. Sir, consultants, here they're useless people. I tell you, and he was a senior vice minister.
Except himself.
Huh? Yeah, he said, and I found out he used to work with 3-4 people and he considered everybody useless. I said, sir, give me your worst people. Give me your worst 10. The ones who will, in fact, will be happy to get rid of. So that I will take care of them for a few days. Give me your worst. They gave me the worst, they were the best. Because, it's a question of, and they really were. They were anxious to learn, they spoke English, and this guy, just because they ignored him, he was somewhere, and they were, so it is, demotivation is not poor handling of, and that poor handling is because of a poor system of handling.
Let us keep brief and some questions we can take for
Over the years since the MOUs have been introduced for the public sector, we felt, I was part of the public sector, we felt it's done fairly good amounts of improvement. From the government's point of view, are there any feelings you all have that there was something wanting in it or some improvements could yet be made in the MOU systems?
I have, because it was my very old angst in me, when I used to sit across the table during the discussions that all the CMDs used to say, Professor, you know, it's one-sided, that all the commitments that the government makes, they never fill, they're not accountable. You know, you're going to measure our performance. What about, MOU has a section on commitments of the government. What about that? What we have done this time is we've taken the same members who are 8 year and we are asking them, and asking the governments, departments which come, that in their results framework document, we put the commitment they have made in the MOU, saying that your performance will be judged by how well you meet the commitments you have made in the MOU. So we're trying to improve the MOU system by ensuring that at least the secretaries now are feeling the pressure to deliver what they commit and not casually commit anything in the MOU.
Probably you have not seen during the last 2 years. You find in each annual meeting, you have a member from Planning Commission, a representative from Planning Commission, a representative from Ministry, and many others. And they take it very, very seriously. This is from minute 1 to minute last. They take notes, and they come back and they sign it. Such a great change is coming back. This can be the last one and then go for Trivedi.
And feel free to send me an email. I'm not very far, and I respond to all my emails. So,
if there is any good question, and if you allow, I will send them to Delhi.
please come.
Please.
One question I always had in my mind was that while some sectors need larger budgetary allocations, what we find in India is totally lopsided. Results framework, for example, the weights you assign, those are very critical. And then finally, the performance may get evaluated for the sector. But then unless the sectoral budgets are appropriately made, I don't think development can be as rapid as what we desire to be. It can only be incremental rather than quantum down. So,
all I can say is recently Mr. Montek Singh Ahluwalia made this statement in a meeting. They said if we were to put all the wish lists together, we will have to get 90% increase in our resources required. Because, every sector thinks this is the most important. And I talked to the non-conventional energy secretary for that, Deepak Das Gupta. He thinks this is the most important. I need all the money I can to develop solar energy. But there are children who are dying, they think that this is the most important. So, at some point, that's with democracy, somebody has to decide the priorities.
yeah,
You can't call them lopsided. They are decided, suggested by, that's why Prime Minister is the chairman of the Planning Commission, very wisely, because that means the highest elected official finally says, yes, I agree with these priorities. Maybe lopsided to you, but that's democracy. People elected.
priorities I think become.
Yeah.
I think we'll come to an end here. And we will be Professor Trivedi that he has given us only a few hours today and he has to come back. And we are in longer time. It has been something, I think, a great, absorbing talk, very interesting talk, and I would say very honestly, without, pretending. This is one talk, I think, which has engaged all of us, and has also given us food for thought as to how, as an academic, or as academics, we can do better. I think this question is very much relevant to people in the academic world. We should sit together and develop our own indices of performance and discuss, I think, irrespective of the rank, age, what we have done, what are the major activities, not only on the activity overall, where we stand. And as Professor Trivedi has told, that's very, very interesting. It's not that you are judged by your own performance, how much you have contributed to others' performance. That is very important because it's not your performance which is important for the institution. It is the performance of each and everybody together which makes an institution great. So you have done very well, but if you have withdrawn, I think, from assisting others, that means you really have not contributed. to the performance of the institution. I think it is a talk of great vitality and importance, and I would only say that it's only Professor Trivedi. I have not come across any person who has taken, I think, debate from one level to another level. It's a very, very great successful person, I think, who is a missionary and who has great zeal. And I think all of us, we wish you much more energy, much more vitality, and many more years of life, and much more support coming, I think, from all the quarters, because we are working for a public cause, and you are now trying to define an elephant. Professor Babu is there. We always say government is a big elephant, and you can't see the elephant in totality. I'm sure now there is a person, I think, who is giving us an index which can work as a helicopter, and we can have a helicopter view of the government, what it is, where it is going, and is it going in the right direction or not, and is it going in tandem with the wishes of the people. I think that's something very, very great. We are extremely grateful to you, sir. I know how much busy you are, and let me also give you feedback. During last 10 days, I have met a couple of secretaries. I won't say how many, but a couple of secretaries, and I had the opportunity to meet many more. I have not come across one instance where they told that they have not liked, this movement, which you have initiated. They might have some reservation, but they know that this movement is for a social cause. It is not for one person and I guess another person. It is, I think, for a rightful cause. So I'm sure that I think we will discuss much more in the days to come, because people have not known much more. I compare this with a silent revolution. What you are doing is a silent revolution, and you require, I think, more and more energy and support, and we all wish, and I'm sure that we will get it from all the corners of the world, and we will be successful in your mission. Can I request? And you always need increasing the efficiency and more output. And today that we have one instance, my colleague Dr. Vinta Sethi has been working for 2 months, and we have a new journal, and request you to kindly release.
Developments taking place in the world in the past 2-3 years, with the coming of recession and how countries have dealt with them, and various changes that have affected especially the emerging economies. So all this kind of inspired us to, we thought it was the right time to come up with a journal like this. So that's how we started going about finding ways to go about, and that's the result. The result was that this journal came up, and we got some good responses. We're trying to make the journal more research oriented, which will have articles which are model based and things like that. So we got a very good advisory board also, very good encouraging messages from people across the world who said they would support us, be on our board and contribute to our journal. So I just hope that it has a good, long, healthy life. Thank you. Krishna, who has been associated with me in the journal and is about the journey of the journal. Thank you.
Other colleagues, he's
also in publications, and all the background help has been given to us by the publication department. We thank them for that. Thank the entire publication department for their help.
Thank you.
And thank you, sir, for releasing the journal. And most important, I forgot to mention, the greater support came from the director, of course, who we take him so for granted because he's always there to support us. We even forget to thank him at times. He's always there without mentioning all the time whenever it comes to research inputs. We don't even sometimes take his permissions. He just tells us go ahead. And I think part of the journey was because of his support. Thank you so much.
time doesn't appreciate. Can I request maybe Jesse Dubin, can you come and say that? You did a very important question. In globalization, we always have to talk about leaders. When you talk about globalized culture, there should be global leaders also.
Very good evening to everyone. I am standing before you to formally propose the vote of thanks for today's evening distinguished lecture. It's our privilege to have with us Dr. Prajapati Trivedi ji, Secretary Performance Management, Government of India, and Chairman, National Authority, Chemical Weapons Convention, Cabinet Secretariat. On behalf of the Board of Governors and the faculty of the Institute of Public Enterprise, I sincerely thank him for readily accepting our invitation for this distinguished lecture in spite of his pressing commitments. Through his lecture, he has brought into light many practical issues of concerns like perceptions about government performance, explanations of government performance, accountability aspects, meaning of governance and performance measurement tools. Also would like to thank our Director Dr. Mishra for arranging a very interesting episode of this distinguished lecture and looking for more of such lectures in further years. I also thank all the faculty who are present here and thank you one and all. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. This is the first, no? I have to attach this and send it. Then they'll give us. After first.
But the few journals are coming for last 5-6 years.
No, first journal will always go with